surprise for the market? Yeah, now take the photographs. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the first bi-monthly monetary policy, post-monetary policy press conference of the fiscal year 2023-24. We are glad to have with us a governor, honorable governor, respected deputy governors. Before we go ahead with the press conference, sir, with your permission, we'll request you to say some opening remarks and then we'll go on with the press conference.
Okay. Good afternoon. Good to have all of you here, as in the previous occasions also. I'd like to make 4 points. First, if I have to characterize today's monetary policy in just one line, I would say as follows. It's a pause, not a pivot. Number 2, there has been an effective rate increase of 290 basis points over the last 1 year, including the SDF 40 basis points rate increase. And this 290 basis points increase, in fact, has translated to a monetary policy transmission by way of increase in the overnight call rates. I have given the numbers in my statement. The overnight call rates have gone up from the daily average in March last year to the daily average in March this year by 320 basis points. I have given the numbers. They were 3.32 last year in March. This year in March, the daily average was 6.52. So therefore, the effective increase has been in the order of 320 basis points. It is therefore now necessary to assess the cumulative impact of our actions taken so far. That's the second point I wanted to make. The third point is that the MPC remains watchful and will not hesitate to take further action in its future meetings as may be necessary. So the job is not yet finished. 4, given that there is overall macroeconomic and financial stability, our priority continues to be price stability. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those opening remarks. I'll begin the press conference by inviting Mr. Ankur Mishra from ET Now to ask his question.
Thank you, Governor. Sir, with the emphasis which you have given on the pause, if I want to understand and take away from that in cricketing parlance, is it a pause like you're watching a good over, you want to continue watching it and then play the shot later? Or this does not leave out the possibility that you will continue to make strokes if at all it is needed later?
To use a cricketing parlance, it will depend on each ball. On a more serious note, we are watchful of how it is playing out. Monetary policy, as you know, is always forward-looking. We are watchful of the impact of the action taken so far. There are so many other external developments also taking place, both with regard to inflation, with regard to growth, and so many other things. So we will be watchful of the overall situation. And monetary policy being forward-looking, we will take further action whenever we think appropriate.
So another question I wanted to ask, just one on SVB financial crisis. You have already given a statement earlier that banks need to be watchful. But in Indian condition, as a regulator, do you feel that such crisis cannot happen, at least in India?
I think I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Governor. I think Governor said in his statement that as of now, the Indian banking system remains sound and healthy, with strong capital and liquidity position, improving asset quality, better provisioning coverage, along with the improved profitability. Governor said in his statement also, it's an evolving position, and we are living in an uncertain period. But one thing I would like to add, that the prudential regulation are across the commercial banks are uniformly applied, whether it is SLR, CRR, LCR, NSFR, investment fluctuation reserve, and the stress testing. So there is no differentiation just because of the sheer size of the asset of the bank.
Thank you.
Thank you, sirs. I'll move on to Mr. Laltendu Mishra from The Hindu.
Thank you, Governor, for taking my question. Sir, the RBI is using data to decide whether to increase rates or take a pause. You have taken a pause, it's a great thing. And as we all know, increasing interest rate continuously has a risk for financial stability, and that is playing out in the US. So my question is to you, sir, is that at what point in terms of data will the RBI concede that using interest rate alone to tackle inflation has its own limits? Thank you, sir.
I would request Dr. Patra to take that.
First of all, in the fight against inflation, interest rates alone have not been used. They have been used in conjunction with supply-side measures because alongside demand pressures, there have been multiple shocks, overlapping shocks from the supply side. So first of all, that's the fact. Then we have an assignment where regulatory macroprudential policies are assigned to financial stability. So they are separate tools which ensure that banks are sufficiently buffered against the kind of shocks that you saw.
Thank you, sir. I'll move on to Ms. Lata Venkatesh from CNBC TV 18.
Thank you, Yogesh. Governor, I have just a set of questions on inflation. Now, if inflation proceeds as per the Reserve Bank's statement, then will you still have to hike, or is it a pause? And going on to, if that is the assumption, 5.2 is the Q4 inflation, so your real positive rate becomes 130 basis. Is that the comfort zone? If it is, then for FY 24-25, the MPR says your range is between 4.7 and 4.4. So technically, in a few months, you should be cutting, because otherwise you will be 200 basis points real rates. Is that the way we should understand it? But first, if it evolves as per trajectory, is there no hike needed?
The average inflation we have given for the current year is 5.2%, and our target is 4%. Given the confluence of factors which prevail today, I have said it in my statement also, given the confluence of factors which prevail as of today, we have taken this policy decision in today's meeting. Our target is 4%. And if you see the monetary policy's withdrawal of accommodation, it says to progressively align with the target. So therefore, we have to always keep in mind that 4% is the target, and we will work towards that. Beyond that, it would not be possible for me, with so many uncertainties remaining, it's not possible for me to make certain assumptions and say that if these assumptions work out, I will act accordingly, because there may be so many other developments also happening. And in an extremely uncertain environment like the one we have today, I mean, just last week, you had the OPEC Plus cut, and I have referred to it, with so many other developments taking all over. And given the heightened uncertainty, I would not like to commit myself to, if this happens, I will do this. I would rather wait, and as in a game of chess, we keep on thinking about our forward moves, and we will act when the time arises. Would you like to supplement anything?
Just a word on.
No, I think
Yeah,
you-
sure, please.
Yeah, just to supplement, we had this conversation in the last meeting.
Mike.
Where you raised a similar question. I would like to add to Governor's remarks by saying that relative to last meeting, we are much better off. If you recall, at that time we were 0.9 percentage points
Yes.
above the 4 quarters ahead rate. Today we are 1.3 percentage points. So economic theory says that if you are a disinflationary central bank, you should react more than proportionally to the change in inflation. And we have achieved that in this meeting.
Okay, so
Sir,
just a word on growth.
maybe we
since-
can come back later. I'll just
We'll
move
come
on to
back.
others. I'll invite Mr. Ben Jose from PTI to ask his question.
Just switch off the mic, please.
Good morning, Governor. Ben here. While everybody has have a lower forecast for growth, you have increased the growth forecast by 10 basis points. What is the rationale for that? And there have been calls by certain analysts that RBI have to decouple from the US Fed when it comes to monetary policy. Is this the beginning of that decoupling?
Beginning of?
Decoupling from the Fed policy rate.
Now, with regard to coupling with the US Fed, it has never been so. For some reason, sections of the market has been seeing it that way. And repeatedly, I have been stressing that our monetary policy is determined primarily by domestic factors. So therefore, we were never really coupled with the US Fed action. And it's for you to really interpret. With regard to the growth numbers, I think let Dr. Patra reply to that.
So you should see the forecast as compared with the estimated actual for 22-23. So we are actually downgrading our growth outlook for 23-24 by 50 basis points, from 7% to 6.5. What you are, I think, alluding
policy
to...
to 6.4.
Yeah,
6.4 to 6.5. One important change is that there is a change in the oil price assumption from 90 to 85.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Good.
Thank you, sirs. I'll move on to Ms. Chloe Cornish from Financial Times.
Thanks, Yogesh. Some bankers are considering the 6.5% will be the terminal rate, despite what you said about the willingness to take further action. I'm just wondering what you would say to them. I mean, is it the terminal rate, or should they really understand that you're serious about taking further action as needed?
I think everyone should take seriously what I have said. And I just now said that it's a pause, not a pivot. And we have said that the MPC stands ready to act should the situation so warrant in the future meetings. So I think banks or anybody else, they can draw their own inferences, but I think it will be better. It will be desirable that they sort of take our words seriously, and I think they do take our words seriously, and accordingly they price in their future actions.
Thank you, sir. I'll move on to Mr. Govardhan Rangan from Economic Times to ask his question.
So good afternoon, Governor. You mentioned about the OPEC decision that has actually caused the volatility. But if you look at that statement, you have actually decreased the crude oil price assumption from what it was in the past. Plus, your action and the forecast, like for the first time you used the phrase that for this meeting only, which I don't think which you have ever used in the past. So your forecast and your actions are kind of appears to be a bit contradictory or contrasting. How does one read all this projection which takes the inflation down, but at the same time saying that this is not a pause? In the sense we are not going to stop here. How does it add up?
You see, $85 per barrel is the average for the whole year. Today the prices have gone up to 85, and they are now, I think morning they were just little below $85 per barrel. But this assumption is for the whole year, and the year has just started. So therefore, we have to wait and see, and we have reasons to believe that it will be around the assumption which we have made, that is at $85. And what is the other one you said?
So about that, for this meeting only, you use the phrase which
we
you have never
want to
done.
emphasize and drive home the point, what I said just now, that it is a pause in this meeting. Don't take it as a pause for several meetings in the future or for all times to come.
But all
Take it as a pause only for this meeting.
But all your forecasts, whether it is inflation or the real positive rates, growth forecast, so everything points to a fact that it could be a bit longer than this one meeting alone.
Let us see. I think the future will decide. Monetary policy is forward-looking, as I said. So we will wait for we will make our analysis about the evolving outlook and take a decision. Beyond that, I don't think I would like to tie myself up and tie myself down to any specific, commitments.
Thank you, sir. I'll move on to Ms. Swati Khandelwal from Zee Business News.
सबसे पहले जो आपने कहा वो बहुत क्लियरली इस्टेब्लिश कर रहा है कि आरबीआई विल बी वॉचफुल, आप सब कुछ कॉशियस होकर टाइमली इंटरवीन करेंगे जब ज़रूरत होगी. लेकिन आपने ये भी एडमिट किया है दैट ग्लोबल चैलेंजेस आर प्रिटी बिग, और उसके चलते हम ओपेक में देख रहे हैं अब कटिंग प्रोडक्शन इज बिगिनिंग अगेन. आपने जीडीपी फोरकास्ट ग्रोथ को बढ़ाया है डिस्पाइट दैट, तो आर यू ओवर ऑप्टिमिस्टिक अबाउट दिस, एंड अगर ये चैलेंजेस रहेंगे तो फिर ये टारगेट कैसे मीट होगा सर?
I mean, we have given our forecasts. It's for you to interpret whether we are over-optimistic, but we are always prudent in our approach. As a central bank, the Reserve Bank is always prudent and always on the conservative side, like any other central bank. And at this point of time, we do believe that these are likely the numbers, and we have come out with that. And the underlying, the growth momentum also at the moment I have explained in my statement that the, the high frequency indicators and the economic activity continues to be resilient. And as the Deputy Governor just mentioned, current year growth is 7%. So next year we are reducing it to 7.5%. Sorry, 6.5%. From 7 we are reducing it to 6.5. So therefore, where is the optimism?
Thank you, sir. I'll now move on to Mr. Mayur.
But
Shetty.
overall, we are optimistic about the Indian economy.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. I'll move on to Mr. Mayur Shetty from Times of India.
Thanks, sir. Governor, you mentioned that the cumulative rate hike works out to 6.9%, including the SDF. But the SDF operates only on one end of the corridor. Sorry, you said 2.9% rate hike. And what happens when the rates move outside the corridor, and what would be the relevance of the reverse repo rate? And so one more question, if I may. Recently, there has been a lot of news on countries moving away from the dollar for trade. So I was wondering if you could give an update on India's move to internationalize the rupee for trade.
I think the first part of the question, Dr. Patra, you can take. And the second part on rupee, DG Ravi Shankar can take.
So if you recall, during the pandemic, RBI managed liquidity in such a way that the call money rate, which is the operating target of monetary policy, hovered around the reverse repo rate. Okay, so that was like close to 335. So the lift of the rate has to start from 335. So the first stage of lift was to take it to the SDF rate, which was placed 40 basis points above the fixed rate reverse repo. That's why Governor mentioned not just the 250 that is done in the repo rate, but the 40 which was done without the repo rate by just doing the SDF. That's why 290. And yes, rates need not always fall within the corridor. They sometimes fall out of the corridor depending on liquidity conditions. But the idea is to keep it as close, as aligned to the corridor as possible.
On the interest, on the rupee internationalization, we are seeing that interest. Volumes are not picking up as much, but I think those are teething issues that needed to be worked out. So the number of countries from which interest is coming is gradually increasing. The number of banks with whom accounts are opened are gradually increasing. The number of overseas banks who are opening those accounts are gradually increasing. So, the initial processes are on, they are encouraging, but this is, as all of you would realize, a long-term objective, and we have to build towards that. Thank you. Beg your pardon? People have actually exported and imported on rupee. Some transactions have happened, definitely, yes.
You see, the stakeholders on either side, they're getting adjusted to it. It's a completely new paradigm for stakeholders, for importers and exporters from both sides, for banks on both sides meaning India and whichever is the country at the other end. So they're getting used to it. So it is something which we expect will improve steadily.
If I may just add, we are seeing a lot of official interest in this. Other central banks, other governments taking note of this and trying to talk and find out and explore the opportunities as well.
Thank you, sirs. I'll move on to Mr. Anup Roy from the Bloomberg.
Thank you, sir. Sir, you have said that this is a pause, not a pivot. Why not give, a more longer duration guidance kind of thing, and what will trigger the pivot? And also, sir, is your pause this time based on your internal assessment of CPI, since there has been concerns about overestimation of CPI in the last two prints?
No, nothing like that. The decision is mainly premised upon the fact that we have done so much in the last 12 months. We started our SDF action last year in April, and now we are in April. The rate action repo rate came in May, and now we are in April. So it's just about a year. So we felt that it's now time to assess the cumulative impact of the actions which we have taken so far. And with regard to, the other part, giving guidance, if you recall in my minutes of the monetary policy meeting, I think it was last time, I had said that in an extremely uncertain environment that we are facing, it is not prudent to give specific forward guidance with regard to rates.
Thank you, sir. I'll
Sir, about that CPI thing, sorry.
Okay.
CPI?
Is your pause based on the CPI, your internal assessment of CPI?
CPI is the domain of NSO. We have brought to public sensitivity the issues therein, that if there is no price, there should be no, it should not be an issue of how missing, like when mangoes go out of season. There is no mango price quoted. So that should have been the approach. That's all we are saying. We are not going to tamper with CPI or assume that it will change methodology or anything like that. We take it as it is.
Thank you, sirs. Mr. Manojit Saha from Business Standard.
Thank you. You have said that on the stance, because there is a lot of discussion on the stance in the market also. You said the overall inflation is above the target, and given the current level, the present policy rate can still be regarded as accommodative. Does that mean that until and unless inflation comes to 4%, there is no question of changing the stance to neutral, because neutral stance could be interpreted as a dovish signal? That is one. The second is the inflation, domestic inflation depends on the pump prices. Does it give you the satisfaction that since pump prices are not responsive to the crude prices of 85 or 90, so a sharp increase from 85 to 90 to 95, even 100, the pump prices may not change because it has not changed when it was 70. So does that give you the comfort that even if there is a shock, that your inflation projections will not change much?
You take that.
So just to answer your question in specific terms, this stance is valid up to 10 a.m. June 8, 2023. At that time, the governor will give you the results of our review of the whole situation, including forward-looking indicators. what was your second question?
The
Yeah, pump price. Yeah.
pump prices.
As you know, some time ago, the government decided to link pump prices with international prices. Okay, but that mechanism is now not in operation. So giving you this sense gives you the sense of the under-recovery of oil marketing companies, the likely hidden inflation, which can surface if it is aligned again. But it's just to give the public that awareness that there is this difference there.
And just to supplement one